that my wife, Robin's side of the family participates in every year. It's called Cranberry Picking Weekend. And she's invited me to join them over the past few years, but this is really the first time that I finally actually agreed to it, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect. You see, Cranberry Picking Weekend isn't about going to a pick-your-own cranberry farm like you do when you go apple picking or blueberry picking. Rather, Cranberry Picking Weekend is work. It's hard work. Because Robin has an uncle who owns a cranberry bog that's about the size of a football field. And this isn't his day job, but each year he grows cranberries, he harvests them, and then sells them to Ocean Spray. And if the crop is considered perfect, then it gets packaged up into the fresh bags of berries that you see in the produce section. If the crop is considered to be very good, but not perfect, then the berries end up getting processed into the cranberry juice and the cranberry sauce that you see in the aisles. Now, don't ask me what happens when, a crop is considered to be bad, because I don't think that's ever actually happened to him before. But I can share with you what the ideal berry looks and tastes like. And I actually brought some to share with everybody today. So if you want, by all means, please, feel free to take one or two and pass it along to folks. Start this way. Now, one of the, whoops. Okay, I lost this one. There we go. All right. So one of the things I should mention is that when you bite into the berries, it has a really nice tart flavor. I actually forgot to grab a berry for myself. And the other thing is that you'll notice is that when you pop into it, you should hear a really nice pop, and it should sound something kind of like this. Hopefully you're able to hear that. I don't know if my mic is working. Okay. So, and again, when you taste it, it has a very tart flavor, made especially tart after you brush your teeth, but they're really delicious. And again, it's because it's in its raw form, it's free of processing, there's no artificial sugars and all that kind of stuff, it's the raw berry. So in September and October, these 2 months are considered to be the harvest season for picking the cranberries. And around this time of the year, Robin's extended family joins in to help her uncle with the harvesting. Now, I'm from Iowa, and I don't know about the rest of you, but when I think about harvesting cranberries, I think of this huge bog. Think of those goofy guys on the commercials where they're in their waders, they're up to their armpits, and they're standing around in this flooded field. And that's called wet picking. And wet picking apparently is, where the berries, most of the berries typically come for juices and sauces. And that's not what we were doing at all. We were instead, imagine this, imagine 30 people having descended upon this man's cranberry bog, and they're of all ages, and some people are tilling the berries and gathering them up. Other people are taking the burlap bags and bringing them over to these big gray bins where groups of people are standing around waiting for them to go pick out the berries. And that group of people around the bin, they basically are looking for all of the berries that might be broken or squished, or maybe they just don't look quite right, and picking them out. And this is called dry picking. And that group of people that were standing around the gray bins of berries, looking around for all those little rotten berries and stuff, that's what I was doing. It was a lot of fun. So it's hot, it's grueling, and to be quite honest with you, it's a little bit mind-numbing after you've been sifting around a few thousand berries over a few hours and hours, throughout the day. And in the past, like I said, Robin would actually ask me if I would want to join, and I almost always said no. Actually, I did always say no. And granted, most of the time it was because I was busy with other stuff. I had other commitments. But the fact of it is, it's hard work, and it just didn't really sound very appealing either. So here I am, I'm huddled over my little pallet of berries, and I'm fairly certain that everyone thinks that I'm hating being there. And I know this because my wife kept coming up to me, asking me, are you okay? You doing all right? And, I was doing just fine. And in many ways, these types of very repetitive tasks, they're kind of meditative in nature. And so, as I'm picking through these berries, I'm getting into a rhythm and, starting to kind of think. And the thinking wasn't very deep at first. It was really, first about just kind of, is this a good berry? Is this a bad berry? Do I need to toss it? What do you think? And just kind of getting myself into a groove. But then I started thinking about this whole cranberry buying and picking process. And this notion about how we are, picking out these bad berries so that at the end of the day we can get this really nice crop of berries of a dry pick that will yield the most money for her uncle. And, the reason for that, obviously, is that with the dry pick berries, those berries can be packaged up as the fresh berries that you see, but there's so many different uses for them. You can eat them fresh, you can dry them, you can freeze them, you can let them ferment a little bit and maybe turn them into juice. And so, it's this notion of the berries having multiple uses. And as I was thinking about that, I started thinking about church, because berries and church really go well together, right? But if you do think about it, and this is kind of what I was thinking, is that in many ways we are now, in our stewardship season, beginning a harvest of our own. And there are lots of different analogies that you can use, but the one that really kept rolling around my head that day was, if my money were a bin of cranberries, what kind of cranberries would I be sharing with all of you? Would my berries be included in that fresh bag that you see, or would mine be set aside and be considered, good for juice? And is that good? Is that bad? Does it really matter? At the end of the day, it's all going down the same way, and it tastes delicious. And so, as I thought about my own journey with grace, one of the things that I realized is that the cranberries that I've shared with you, and will continue to share with you, has really changed over the years. And they will continue to change, always ebbing and flowing. Sometimes it'll be a really fresh batch of berries, and sometimes it'll be some berries that need to be put aside for juice. 4 years ago, I joined this church during an unsettling time in my life. I was in the middle of a difficult divorce, and my participation with the church was cautious, perhaps even a little bit untrusting. And in many ways, my goals and what I needed from this church really reflected a personal journey for healing. And my ability to give of myself and of my resources reflected that. I attended services, I donated a modest amount when the plate was passed around during collection, but then I ran out the door as quickly as I could as soon as service was over. And the faster that I got to my car without speaking to anybody, the better. In other words, I was probably helping to make some juice. And I was giving what I could with no strings attached. And you know what? That was great. That is what I could do in that time of my life. And, that was right for me at that. That was right for me then. But evolution happens. And eventually, worship was no longer just about attending service. It was about actively participating. Starting first as an occasional lector, and then watching that extend out into other areas of the outreach that we provide and we share with folks. Having my son Jackson attending children's education, and just this overall general sense of community. Wednesdays at Grace became a staple in our weekly routine. It was something to look forward to, something to help keep us grounded with this community throughout the week. And godly play developed into a foundation for Jackson's spiritual growth. And moreover, I found myself engaging more with others, taking the time to get to know many of you better, and in doing so, opening myself up so that you could get to know me too. My wife can attest to the fact that I'm notoriously closed off, kind of hard to get to know. And so this is actually a really big deal for me to be able to make myself available to you emotionally. And in many ways, I started feeling very invested. This was now becoming a community that I wanted to have a stake in. And so I decided to take the next step. I decided to pledge. And I remember when I made this decision, a very deliberate promise, however big or small, to put some skin in the game. And I had no idea what to do. None. My parents were regular contributors to our church when I was a child, so naturally, however age I was at the time, I'm not going to share that, I called my mom to get her advice. And, again, the thought was like, what do you give? I wanted to show that I was invested, but I didn't want to overstretch myself. And the thought that kept going through my head was, what if I couldn't make good on this number that I wrote down? That would be kind of embarrassing. And I have so many obligations. I've got bills and bills and bills and a child to support. And the list goes on and on and on. At the end of the day, it really came down to balance. And so I started low. It wasn't much, but that way I knew my other obligations wouldn't be compromised. And then throughout the year, as I could, I'd add on more when I felt like it was right. In many ways, I was still helping to make juice, but now I was committing to making juice. And it wasn't just any juice, it was my juice for my church. And again, throughout the year, I would sprinkle on a little bit more, maybe throw in a few fresh berries. And the evolution continues. The other day, Jackson, Robin, and I were talking about our old apartment. It was a nice apartment, and we really liked it. And when it was Jackson and myself, it was enough. And then Robin and I got married. And as Jackson put it, we were like flowers moving from one pot to another. And while we were really happy where we were, and we were happy with the roots that we had been establishing, it was time to grow. The time had come. We needed a bigger pot, one that allowed us the space to expand our roots even further, deeper, and to allow for the flowers to be even more brilliant. And we needed a pot that would allow us to absorb more, and then in turn give more out. And so it has been with my journey with Grace. My growth with you, with all of you, with this, and because of this community, is tenfold. In moving from one pot in my life to another, I've been able to open my hands and my heart to give more of myself. And in return, I have received far more than I would have ever expected. And for that, I'm profoundly grateful. And the way that I give of myself reflects that, whether it be with my time or my money. And the way that I give is no longer about a number, and it's no longer about showing that I'm committed. It's about being present. It's about being intentional. It's about giving back and committing to give back to this community for what I am so very grateful for having received. 4 years ago, I joined you as a cautious attendee, where my participation was more to do with my own very personal needs. And today, I join you as a steward of the church, fully committing of my time, my energy, and my financial resources, so that others may reap the benefits of what we have to offer, just as I did not that long ago. Today, I join you as a vestry member, where I've been privileged to see firsthand all that it takes to build a solid foundation for our ministry, education, and continued outreach. And let me tell you, Grace Church has an amazing flower pot, and it's made possible by the gifts that all of you have to share. Because of you, our worship has expanded to include a 5 p.m. service, allowing us to reach people who otherwise can't or don't want to attend traditional Sunday services. Because of you, our outreach and mission work has produced amazing programs like Green Up, Clean Up, which I believe actually won another award for its leadership in the community. It has clothed hundreds of people from our clothing pantry, and it has fed, I think, thousands of people via our participation
with the St. Luke's Soup Kitchen. And it has most recently sent church members to Colombia for international missionary work. Because of you, our youth and adult education programs are bursting. They're vibrant and they're well attended. And we're able to provide new tools to help guide in our spiritual learning. Because of you, our historic building is well cared for and continues to be updated with improvements. Improvements like our renovated accessible restrooms and updates that are consistent with the values of decreasing our environmental footprint, like incorporating energy-efficient lighting and the installation of solar panels. And because of you, we've happily welcomed Maggie to Grace as an assistant rector and Mia as our Life Together intern. And together with Noah, Grace's counseling, visitation, and healing ministry can expand to reach more of those in need. And we continue to grow. The list isn't all-inclusive by any stretch of what we've done, of what we're doing now, or what we want to continue to do. Maintaining all of this, growing and cultivating all of this, it takes an inordinate amount of resources, of time, energy, and financial resources. We have so much to share, and we have far more than what our flower pot now can hold. So as we enter into our own harvest season, I ask you to go through an exercise of your own. How far have you come in your spiritual journey? How would you like to grow, and how do you envision growing with us? What kind of steward will you be for your community, for our community? Will you be able to help us to commit in participating with your time, energy, and yes, your money? Whether it's a bowl of cranberries or a cup of juice, I invite you to commit in helping to nourish, protect, and celebrate our congregation's mind, body, and spirit brought together in Christ. Amen.